You don't invade Serbia, you audition for the role of unwitting extra in a national epic that's been running for 2 millennia. From above, the country looks like a crossroads. From the ground, it feels like a trap stitched together by rivers, ridgelines, and towns that grew up precisely where your logistics officers most wished they hadn't. Belgrade, the gatekeeper at the confluence of the Sava and Danube, stares down every approach vector like a doorman with a degree in civil engineering. The soil here remembers empires by the dents they left in the hills, and it does not forget easily. History's cliffs echo in the present. When NATO bombed in 1999 instead of invading, the lesson was brutally clear. You can break bridges in hours, but you cannot cross rivers without them. Serbia learned what happens when the arteries are severed. Anyone who arrives next must either rebuild under fire or detour into ambush country, where the map says shortcut and the terrain says nice try. The Danube, Sava and Drina are not obstacles so much as decision makers, and they do not vote for your convenience. Cue a hard cut to September 2025. Belgrade stages the biggest military parade in its history. 10,000 troops marching through New Belgrade, while the sky writes a thesis in contrails. Tanks growl, drones hum, missile tubes glint, and 2 Rafales slice the air overhead like silver checkmarks on a very expensive shopping list. On the ground, you spot Israeli PULS launchers, Chinese air defense systems, Russian armor still in service, and a menagerie of domestic kit that looks purpose-built for the country's roads, hills, and weather. Call it deterrence by choreography. 1 part spectacle, 1 part signal. Serbia is modernizing fast, and it's sourcing from everywhere that matters. If you want to read geopolitics in steel, here's your syllabus, marching past in formation. Let's rewind for context. Serbia sits ringed by NATO states, still angling toward EU membership and hedging its bets with defense ties that stretch from Paris to Beijing to Jerusalem and yes, to Moscow. This isn't indecision, it's geometry. When every border nudges you into competing security ecosystems, you don't pick one door, you keep them all ajar while you reinforce the house. That's why the parade mattered. It showed a force pulling in French jets, Chinese missiles, Israeli rockets, and local armor under one umbrella, while insisting that political neutrality and EU ambition can share a tent, provided the tent has good camouflage.
Now, the modernization story that makes invasion planners clutch their risk matrices. The headliner is the Rafale deal, 12 fighters, a generational leap in sensors and weapons, and the scaffolding for Western-style sustainment. Deliveries are slated toward the decade's end, with financing lined up through French banks and the configuration tailored to Serbia's budget and doctrine. What matters more than the paint job is the effect. A credible, quick-reaction spear that raises the price of airspace trespass and gives Serbian controllers options beyond duck and pray. Today, it's 2 Rafales fly by for the cameras. Tomorrow, it's an air wing that forces an intruder to plan around meteors, or, at the very least, a wall of Mika shots and a radar picture that arrives on time. But the sky over Serbia has more than jets in it. In April 2022, the Chinese FK-3, export cousin of the HQ-22, arrived by a dramatic Y-20 airlift, Europe's first fielding of that system. Since then, crews have trained, the batteries have knitted into national air defense plans, and the message to potential invaders is blunt. Mid-altitude corridors are no longer your playground. Add Pantsir for point defense, and you've got a tiered umbrella. FK-3 pushes you higher and further. Pantsir and the domestic PASARS swat low-slow leakers and drone swarms trying to sneak under the weather. Even a modestly tiered network in Balkan terrain is like a matador's cape woven from radar screens. You rush in at your peril. ISR is where the story quietly becomes dangerous for an attacker. In early 2025, Serbia brought in Thales Groundmaster radars, the GM200 and the GM400 Alpha, modern, mobile 3D air surveillance sets designed to survive, move, and keep painting the sky. Integrate those with existing sensors and you shorten detection timelines, thicken targeting data for shooters from FK-3 to PASARS, and complicate any hope of a clean air corridor. Think of it as turning the Balkan fog into a networked weather map that your strike package can't outrun. Also, if you're trying to slip in cruise missiles or cheap drones, These apertures will see the surprise coming a little earlier than you'd like. Then there's the artillery rocket revolution. Serbia's purchase of Israel's PULS gives it a menu of munitions from 35 to roughly 300 kilometers, all on nimble Tatra 6x6 carriers that can hop across Serbia's mixed roads and farm tracks like they were designed for them, because they basically were. PULS isn't just about range, it's about readiness. Multi-caliber loadouts let commanders pick the right stick for the right hornet's nest, and the launcher's shoot and scoot profile turns counter battery into a lottery you are unlikely to win. Spotted already in rehearsals and on parade, PULS is the kind of system that makes bridging operations a nightmare, and cluster HQs rethink their love affair with big tents. If your invasion plan assumes leisurely pontoon parks, Serbia's new rockets would like a word, preferably at standoff distance. The headlines glow, but the backbone of any defense is the infantry, protected, mobile, and awake at 3 a.m. Serbia's been busy here too. The Biovo TM21, a fresh APC iteration, is rolling into units with a 12.7mm remote turret, firing ports, smoke launchers, and a cabin built for the kind of roadside ugliness modern wars specialize in. It's not a fashion statement, it's a rolling promise that squads won't be thrown at problems with nothing but grit and a prayer. Pair those with Milosh 4x4 MRAP-style vehicles for patrol, recon, and urban lanes where a tracked IFV is a bull in a Balkan chima shop, and you get a grid of small, tough platforms that move people to the right fight with fewer funerals on the schedule. For the tracked punch, the upgraded BVP M80 AB1 brings an old Yugoslav workhorse into the present, with better armor, modern sights, stabilized weapons, and options for ATGMs. No one pretends it's a brand new Western IFV, but in home terrain, where shot angles are short and ambush arcs are everything, those upgrades matter more than brochure gloss. Better optics plus better protection equals a more survivable section vehicle, and survivable section vehicles are the ones still delivering squads to the next ridge after your artillery plan hit a mud wall. Air defense follows the infantry like a loyal but paranoid dog. PASARS 16, Serbia's hybrid gun and missile truck, is exactly the kind of kit that gives helicopter pilots heartburn and drone operators deja vu. Drop a Bofors 40mm on a 6x6, wire it to short-range missiles. French Mistral and local Oralen 1 variants have both been in the mix, and you get a road-mobile porcupine that camps near bridges, columns, or ammo parks and dares anything low and slow to peek around the hill. It's not glamorous, it's effective, and effectiveness wins small wars that keep big wars from starting. Small arms tie the room together. Zastava's modular family, new-gen rifles in 7.62 by 39 and 6.5 by 39, and the M20 modular submachine gun reflect a push to standardize around flexible ergonomics and optics-ready rails. The EZ9 pistol remains a sturdy, serviceable sidearm for the people who will actually clear the stairwells, while everyone else argues on the internet about 5th-generation fighters. None of this is glamorous either, but modular rifles and simple, reliable pistols are the daily bread of units that expect to fight at 50 meters as often as at 5 kilometers. On Serbia's slopes and in its neighborhoods, that ratio looks about right. The point of modernization is not to cosplay as a great power. It's to make every kilometer of your own country too expensive to steal. That's where budget lines become deterrence lines. Serbia's defense outlays have risen across the early to mid-2020s, hovering around the 2% of GDP mark, with absolute spending up from roughly $1.7 billion in 2022 to over $2.1 billion in 2022, and official communications in 2025 pointing to continued prioritization despite a tight fiscal frame. In a region where neighbors are also rearming, that spending and the parade's largest ever framing double as a billboard. The wallet is open for the essentials, and the essentials are layered air defense, rockets, ISR, and protected mobility. Doctrine is shifting too. The government and general staff have openly floated bringing back compulsory military service, short cycles focused on basic soldiering and mobilization readiness. Critics see cost and minimal payoff. Supporters see socialized skills, bigger trained reserves, and a hedge against surprise. In a country whose terrain practically begs for defense in depth, a broader pool of trained citizens is less a nostalgia project than an asymmetric insurance policy. You don't need every conscript to be a commando. You need enough people who know how to dig, shoot straight, pass a radio report, and survive the first week, while the professionals do the loud work. Geopolitically, Serbia is performing a very Balkan magic trick, nurturing EU candidacy while keeping doors open to suppliers in France, China, Israel, and Russia, and conducting high-visibility exercises with the PLA in 2025. That balancing act isn't cost-free. Brussels raises eyebrows, Washington raises questions, but it yields tangible military benefits. The French tie-in accelerates Western integration and data link discipline. Chinese gear fills gaps quickly, often at scale. Israeli rockets turn artillery into a precision strike toolkit. Legacy Russian systems remain in service where they still make sense. If you're an invader, this is a nightmare. The defensive ecosystem draws from multiple shelves, and your countermeasures need to beat 3 supply chains, not 1. So what does all of this do to the battle calculus along Serbia's classic approach routes? From the north, you glide across the Pannonian Plain until the rivers remind you who's boss. Bridges are pre-registered by artillery. Crossings are watched by radars that now see farther and move faster. PASARS trucks and manpads pairs haunt every potential landing zone like patient ghosts. Your best amphibious bridging companies find themselves timing smoke, decoys, and drone suppression against a defender who can answer with PULS salvos and counter recon that actually works. By the time your far bank is secured, so is the defender's confidence that you've spent a day to gain a kilometer. From the south along the Morava axis, the landscape is both a highway and a hallway, straight enough to tempt you, confined enough to punish you. Upgraded M84s and Milos patrols trade space for time, then spring counter ambushes at the bends where thermal sightlines suddenly matter more than top speed. FK-3 coverage pushes your rotary assets higher than they want to fly, while short-range systems nibble at your UAVs until your ISR feed looks like a buffering wheel. Meanwhile, those new French radars keep the picture stitched together, so artillery doesn't shoot where you were, but where you're going. Bring more engineers, bring more patience, bring more apologies for the PowerPoint that said day 3 you'd be in niche. From the west, the Dinaric Alps convert mass into misery. Switchbacks and tree lines give defenders angles your armor will not enjoy, and hide sites that don't reveal themselves until the first vehicle is smoking and the second is reconsidering its life choices. PASARS loves these slopes. So do infantry with modern optics and radios, who can shift squads between terraces faster than your battalion can agree who's got the lead. And if you think you'll bypass the towns have a vote. In Serbia, urban belts function like valves on the country's circulatory system, open for locals, constricted for strangers, closed for invaders. From the east, the Carpathian foothills and the Timok Basin feed you into choke points where the defender knows the range tables by heart. This is where artillery that isn't best in class on paper becomes good enough in practice, because ranges are short, relocations are frequent, and satellites don't see through ridges. Meanwhile, the Danube's barge fleet, yes, barges, gives the defender lateral movement along an interior water highway. That's the kind of unsexy advantage that turns into a column of ammo you didn't think they could move in time. Logistics is chess here, not checkers. 2 quick jokes before we count the ways this ends badly for attackers. 1. Serbian grandmothers can spot an ambush faster than your lieutenant can pronounce Shumadia, and they will scold both sides while handing out coffee that could strip paint. 2. Your shiny drone swarm will absolutely go on strike near the Wi-Fi dead zone, a real place in every Balkan mountain range where signals go to think about their choices. If you hear laughter in the tree line, it's probably an infantry squad whose commander grew up hiking there. Now the math. A Rafale wing by decade's end, plus an FK-3 backbone today, means the air domain is contested the moment you care about it. GM200, GM400, Alpha radars sew the picture together and survive the hunt. PULS puts a ruler over every bridge, depot and assembly area within a long drive of the frontier. Bovat M21s and Milosh 4x4s make infantry mobile enough to dodge the worst and mean enough to counterpunch. PASARS and Pantsir cap your low-altitude arrogance.
Upgraded N80s keep tracked presence in the fight without pretending to be something they're not. And the small arms ecosystem, rifles, SMGs, pistols, makes every block a credible problem instead of a hope and a prayer. Notably, none of this screams offensive juggernaut. It whispers, you will not enjoy your stay. Add policy. If compulsory service returns in a limited, modernized form, Serbia's reserve base thickens. That changes call-up math and forces any attacker to assume that the defender's end strength on day 10 isn't the same as on day 1. In a country with a partisan legacy and a culture of local knowledge, even a short, contemporary conscription cycle refreshes the skill set you need for territorial defense: marksmanship, fieldcraft, basic signals, and the discipline to hold the line while the rockets talk. It's a doctrine shift wearing a vintage uniform. Finally, the balancing act isn't performative. It's a strategic moat. EU candidacy extends political options. NATO neighbours complicate any coalition of the willing that would contemplate coercion. Ties to France deliver a Western service backbone. China provides kit and joint drills. Israel adds precision strike. Russian legacy gear remains where useful. You may question the coherence, but from a defense in-depth perspective, it's brutally coherent. Diversify your suppliers, diversify your training, and never let a single sanctions regime or spare parts shortage shut down your shield. That's not hedging, it's hardening. So, why can't anyone invade Serbia? Because the country has spent the last few years turning geography into a system and a shopping list into a doctrine. The rivers are not obstacles, they're allies. The mountains are not backdrops, they're bunkers. The new radars see early enough for the shooters to matter. The shooters range far enough to make bridges a moral dilemma. The infantry rides in vehicles built for exactly these roads. The air defenses force aviation to blink. The rockets punish mass. The small arms finish the conversation at stairwell distance. And behind all that is a society that has normalized resilience, not as a slogan, but as muscle memory. Let's end where we began, with a parade that wasn't just a parade. The 2025 spectacle in Belgrade was a living snapshot of a force in accelerated transition. French Rafales overhead, Israeli PULS on the move, Chinese FK-3 and French GM radars in the network, Russian hardware still present, and Serbian industry stitching it all together with BOVs, Miloš patrol vehicles, PAS trucks, and upgraded M80s. It was theater, yes, but the kind that sells tickets to deterrence. If you looked closely, you saw not just a show of strength, but a blueprint: layered air defense, mobile fires, protected infantry, and political balance. That's a hard combination to fight and a harder one to occupy, which is why, if you are shopping for targets, you might want to pick somewhere flatter, emptier, and less opinionated. Serbia will still be here, rivers watching, radars turning, engines idling, ready to ask every invader the same question its landscape has asked forever. Are you sure you want to try this? And then, with a polite Balkan smile, answer it for you.